Why thinking about death leads to life. A secret from the Buddha. Years back, there was a Broadway musical, 110 Degrees in the Shade, which was about the miserable heat the pioneers had to go through as they moved into the Midwest. Today, it was 112 in the shade here. On some days like this, as you go through the afternoon, all you can think of is how nice it would be if the afternoon could be over really quickly and things could cool down in the evening. You start wishing your time away. That's when you've got to stop and think. This is your opportunity to practice. You don't know how much longer you've got. So even on days like this, you have to take advantage of the fact that at least you're alive. You can still focus on your breath, you can still focus on whatever your topic of meditation might be, and appreciate the fact that you still have the breath coming in, going out, that you can focus on, that you can use it to train the mind. Think about the things that are still bearable, still tolerable in spite of the heat. If there are cooler parts of the body, the water element in the body, you can focus on that wherever you find a cooler sensation, or focus on the breath. Think of the breath surrounding the body. When you get really into the breath, you start forgetting about the heat. You realize that the opportunities for practice are still here, and you want to make the most of them. If you don't make the most of them, then when your time is up, you'll regret all the wasted time you could have used to develop the skills that would hold you in good stead as you're facing the pains of aging, the pains of illness, the pains of death. We don't like to think about the death, but as the Buddha said, mindfulness of death or recollection of death leads to the deathless. So when he has you think about death, it's not to get you depressed or discouraged. It's to encourage you to realize that there's work to be done. This is as good a time as any to do it, and only when you do the work can reach the deathless. There's that verse in the Appamada. Heedfulness is the path to the deathless. Heedlessness is the path to death. The heedful never die. The heedless are as if already dead. If you're sitting in a hot afternoon thinking about when would this time pass really quickly so that you can get through it, it's as if you're dead. You're not taking advantage of the opportunity you have right here, right now, to develop some really important qualities of mind. So always keep this point in mind as you find yourself trying to rush through certain parts of the day, saying, let's get this over with really fast until it gets more tolerable. Well, you get it over and whoops, there it goes. Your whole life is over. You want to make the most of each moment, but that doesn't mean squeezing as much pleasure out of the moment as you can. It means using the opportunity to develop good qualities of the mind. Heedful of death. One of the customs of the noble ones is to delight in developing and to delight in abandoning. You develop mindfulness, you develop heedfulness, you develop skillfulness. That's a good use of your time. You abandon sensual desire, ill will, torpor and lethargy, restlessness and anxiety, uncertainty. That's a good use of your time. One of the worst things that can hit at the moment of death is a sense of regret. All those opportunities you had to do good, and you didn't take advantage of them. Your guarantee against that is to make the most of your time, even when it's difficult, even when there's hardship. You don't want your goodness to depend on nice conditions. You want it to be there despite difficult conditions, something you can depend on regardless of what the weather is like, what other people are like, what happens to society. This is your real protection, this solidity of the mind. So make the mind dependable. As you keep digging deeper and deeper in the meditation, there does come a point where you find the opening to the deathless. But it's only through this ability to dig regardless of the conditions. That's why the Buddha says that mindfulness of death leads to the deathless. People who don't like to think about death are the ones who are dying all the time. There are some people who are afraid that if they think about death too much, it's like putting a hex on themselves, But that's not the case at all. It's the people who are constantly aware of the possibility of death, who realize that you really have to prepare for it and that you can prepare for it. Those are the ones who can go beyond death. There's a skill to dying, because when that moment comes, you suddenly find you can't stay in the body, and the mind will go with a particular mood. It'll actually have a vision, like a dream that appears. And there won't be just one, many will come. One of the skills we learn in meditation, of course, is to say no to vagrant thoughts that come through the mind, and that will be a good skill to have. The ability to step back from a thought and not go jumping into it. So you can take a step back and say, I don't have to go there. Especially if it's a thought of regret, a thought of remorse, fear, surprise. It's good not to be surprised by death when it comes, because if you're too surprised, there's also going to be the feeling of, why so soon? It's not right. I have so much more life to live. Well, you don't at that point. But I should have more life. Well, what kind of should is that? You have to put those thoughts aside and focus on, okay, the time has come. It's time to do it right. Let's show what we've learned from the meditation. That attitude will see you through. And remember that you've got these skills you developed as a meditator. Those are the skills you need at that point. If you're really skillful, you won't have to come back. But at the very least, you want to be able to come back to a situation where you can continue to practice. Think about the situation we have now, where we can practice. The conditions may not be totally ideal, but they are good. They are sufficient. There are a lot of people who don't have these kinds of conditions because they didn't prepare them. And we do prepare our next life with our actions now. As the Buddha said, when you go to the next life, your good actions are there to receive you like relatives who are receiving a long-lost relative who has finally come home. So even though you're going to a strange new place, your good actions make it feel like coming home. If there are nothing but bad mental qualities to receive you, it's not like coming home at all. It's like going to a totally strange place where nobody is friendly. So the very least you want to develop the qualities that create a good place to come back home to. Or better yet, put the mind to a strong position where it doesn't have to go anywhere at all at that point, doesn't feel the need to latch on to anything. But that can be done only if you develop good qualities now. So appreciate the opportunity you have to do things now. Each time you breathe in, breathe out, as the Buddha said, the heedful person is one who says, "May I live for one more breath so that I can practice the teachings. I could accomplish a lot." That's what it means to be heedful. Regard each breath as an opportunity to practice, an opportunity to develop the mind. Whether it's sitting here meditating or working around the monastery or doing good in other ways, each breath is going to be expended anyhow. So you might as well expend it in something good, something worthwhile, something of solid value. As the Buddha said, all skillfulness comes from heedfulness. That's an important teaching. Heedfulness is the root of all skillful behavior. Notice what he's not saying. He's not saying that our good behavior comes from our natural goodness, our Buddha nature, our innate worthwhile qualities, or our innate nature. The Buddha doesn't assume innate nature at all. There are just qualities that come and go in the mind. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. But heedfulness is the quality that makes you realize, I've got to work on developing the good qualities and abandoning the unskillful ones right now. You realize you do have the choice, and the choice makes a difference. So you want to make sure you make the right choice right now, every right now. That's how skillfulness gets developed in the mind. If you assume that goodness is innate to you, you're not going to have that sense of urgency. You get complacent. But when you start seeing your skillful qualities run out on you, what would you do then? Skillful qualities have to be nurtured. As long as you haven't reached stream entry, actually seeing the deathless in your own awareness, or as they say, touching the deathless with your body. As long as you haven't had that experience, You're still uncertain. Your mind is uncertain. Your future is uncertain. The Buddha doesn't make any guarantees. It's only with stream entry that he starts guaranteeing that you've reached a foothold in crossing the river. In other words, you finally reached the point where your feet can reach the bottom of the river, and you're much less likely to be swept away. And at some point, you're guaranteed to get up on the bank where you're totally free from all the dangers that the river can sweep down at you, all the underwater logs that could hit you in the rib cage, all the weird animals, all the whirlpools, all the other things that a river can do to you. But if you reach the point where your feet can reach the riverbed, you're right next to the shore and you've reached a great deal of safety. Until that point, though, there are no guarantees. And even with people who've reached stream entry, the Buddha says you've got to be heedful. Because even though the stream enterers are guaranteed no more than 7 lifetimes and nothing lower than the human realm, still, the human realm can be pretty miserable. And 7 lifetimes can contain a lot of stress and suffering. So as the Buddha said, just as the footprint of the elephant can contain the other footprints of all the other animals that walk on land, in the same way, heedfulness contains all skillful qualities within it. This is why we think about death, to spark our heedfulness so that we can get on the path to the deathless. We want to be the sort of person who, by thinking about death, goes beyond death. Otherwise, if you refuse to think about death, you're just going to keep on dying over and over and over again. So it's up to you to choose which path you're going to follow, whether you want to be the sort of person who never dies or the sort of person who's already dead. You do have the choice, and everything depends on the choices you make. It's right here in the present moment we make our choices, that's why recollection of death keeps our awareness focused right here. With each breath, we have the opportunity to practice the Buddha's teachings and accomplish a great deal. You're already dead. A woman once came to meditate for 2 weeks at Wat Dhammasati, and on her second day there, she came to see Ajahn Fuang. She said, "I have to go home." He said, "Why?" She said, "I'm worried about my husband and my children. How are they going to eat? Who's going to wash the clothes? Who's going to look after the house?" He told her, "Tell yourself that you've died. They'll have to be able to look after themselves one way or another. So every time a thought comes up, remind yourself, I've already died. I can't go back." She took his instructions and was able to stay for a whole 2 weeks. Of course, that lesson is immediately relevant to our staying here, away from the responsibilities of our work and our family. It's one good way of cutting through all the entanglements we tend to carry with us. It's like a knife that can cut right through them, to remind you that you've got to stay right here and there's no use in worrying about your responsibilities outside, afraid that the world can't get along without you. It will too, perfectly well or perfectly horrible or whatever, but it's going to do its own world thing, whether you're there or not. This helps cut through your sense of self-importance and focuses you on what's really important, the business that really needs to be done, which is straightening out your own mind right here and now. But it's also a useful teaching to use when you go back. When issues come up that cause you worry and distress, just tell yourself, "I'm already dead." It helps put the issue into perspective. On the surface, it may sound morbid, but it's not. It's actually liberating. I know of someone who was participating in a series of seminars on death and dying, and for one of the seminars, the teacher took him aside beforehand and said, "I want you to tell everybody when you go into the room that you're already dead. Then act as if you're already dead. Of course, not lying there like a corpse on the floor, but having the attitude of someone who's already died and is able to come back for a brief visit." The student found it liberating. He could talk to people with a lot more freedom and frankness, and a lot less concern about what they might think about him, or how could win their approval. The following week, when he came back for the next course, He was his old self again, alive. And one of the women in the course took him aside afterwards and said, "You know, I liked you better when you were dead." So it's not morbid, it's actually liberating, freeing, to be able to look at all your worries and all your concerns of daily life from this perspective. You get a true sense of what's important and what's not. You find yourself acting not out of worry for the future, for with that question, if I were to die tomorrow, what would I have liked to have said today? Or if I had a chance to come back after I was dead, what would I want to say to this person? You might actually say it. This practice is recommended for people who have already developed a sense of what's skillful and what's not, and desire to do what's skillful, because there are people in this world who would like to come back and inflict a little revenge if they had the chance. But if you're serious about doing what's skillful, trying to be compassionate, trying to have integrity in your actions, respecting everyone's desire for happiness, then this ability to think of death is not all that scary. It lifts your fears, living your life with that perspective. You can ask yourself, if I were to die and were looking back at my life, looking back at today, what would I wish I had done today? What would I wish I'd said today? Knowing that most of your ordinary worries and cares are rendered pretty meaningless by death, then live your life from that perspective. Say the good things you will have wished you had said. Do the good things you will have wished you had done. If you stop and think about this, you'll see that you will have wished you'd spent more time training the mind. When you're dealing with other people, you will have wished you had said the kind thing, the helpful thing, the appropriate thing, something that wasn't worried about what you could get out of that person or what you wanted that person to be, but simply expressing your concern, expressing your compassion, and looking at your own mind, what you wish to have done. You'll have seen that the skills you develop as a meditator, being mindful, being alert, having a sense of restraint, prove to be really useful, and you would wish you had done it more. There's a story Ajahn Lee tells of a woman who came to a monastery and saw that one of the walking meditation paths was dirty. So she swept it and set out some water. She felt really good about what she had done. It so happened on her return home she had a heart attack and died, reborn as a diva. She asked herself, "Gee, what did I do to deserve this?" The memory came to her that she had swept the path. So she thought, suppose I had done more than that. I'd have an even nicer palace and even nicer setup here. So she went back down and found a meditating monk out in a forest, and just stood there staring at him to see what she could do for him. It turned out he had psychic powers. He could see her, and so he chased her away. Stop trying to butt in on human beings' merit. You had all that opportunity when you were alive. Stop being so greedy. Let human beings have a chance to make some merit. So she fled back to her palace. The lesson here being that when you have a chance to do good, do it. Learn how to see which of your concerns are important and which ones would be rendered meaningless by death. And remember, oh yeah, I am going to die. I don't have all the time in the world, but I do have this moment. What's the best thing to do with this moment? How can I make the most of it? When you look at each moment from this perspective, you're using what the Buddha called recollection of death in the right way. It's not meant to be depressing. It's not meant to be discouraging. It's simply meant to get your priorities straight as to what's important and what's not. And it lifts a huge burden off the mind. There's no way you're going to be able to tie down all the loose ends of your life, all your outside affairs. But you do want to have developed as many skillful qualities in your mind as you can, because those are the things you take with you, qualities the Buddha calls noble treasures. The first treasure is conviction in the Buddha's awakening and what it means for your life. In other words, he was able to find true happiness through his own efforts, developing qualities in his mind that you have in a potential form in your mind. Virtue, being restrained in your actions, not harming yourself, not harming anybody else, having a sense of shame and compunction. Shame here doesn't mean that you're ashamed of yourself. You're just ashamed at the thought of doing something unskillful because you know better. You're a better person than that, so why are you doing that? Compunction is the fear of the consequences that come when you act in a shoddy way. When the mind says, "I don't care," and gets irresponsible and apathetic, you don't listen to it. You realize that your actions do have consequences, and you've met up with the consequences of unskillful actions in the past. Do you want more of those? Well, no. This is a healthy fear, and it's a treasure. If you have shame and compunction, you don't do things that you'll later regret. With regret, once it digs into the mind, there's nothing you can do to get it out, no amount of money to make it go away, which is why shame and compunction are treasures. There's learning the Dhamma, which means not only listening, but also thinking about it, questioning it. When the Buddha taught, he didn't teach nice-sounding platitudes. He didn't offer things for your reflection without being responsible about what he was saying. Everything he said had meaning. And he recommended that the monks question him if there was anything they didn't understand. In fact, you were doing him a favor if you questioned him right then and there. That was his attitude. He's not here anymore, but you want to question his teachings. How do these things have a meaning in my life? Ask yourself that question. Do your best to figure that out. Then put the teachings into practice. That tests your understanding and refines it to see what he really did mean about mindfulness, alertness, ardency. Another treasure is generosity. You know that someday you're going to have to give up everything you have, so before it's wrenched from your grasp, learn how to let it go. If you see something that you have and someone else could use well, make a practice of giving it. The mind gets lighter, more expansive. That sense of spaciousness in the mind, when you're not always worried about losing this or being deprived of that, that sense of space can't be bought. Then there's discernment, the ability to see things arising and passing away in the mind, so that you can understand what's skillful and what's not, what needs to be developed, what needs to be abandoned. All these things are treasures. These are the things that stick with you even after you die. Working from the perspective of death, these are the things you should be focusing on. So, when you tell yourself that you've already died, it's not to make you depressed, despondent, or hopeless. It's just to put everything in a clear light. And the dispassion that comes from seeing things in that clear light is not oppressing. It's liberating. There's a sense of relief. You've put down all your petty concerns. You've let yourself focus on the things that are really important. In that way, you're alive. More alive than normal. You're living your life well.